Story 15. Was 15F dating 15M? First love. Walked into his room one day, looked him in the eyes, and just took off my pants lol. I had been so nervous and overthinking that I went with the rip those pants off like a band-aid method. Story 16. I was 15. My first girlfriend and I went to the movie theater and walked around our local town center afterwards. Around 7 or 8 p.m. when it was dark, we walked behind one of the stores, Best Buy I believe, and had sex in their loading dock. I remember it was really cold and extremely uncomfortable. Horrible experience and would not recommend. Story 17. Back of her parents' van, in a Walmart parking lot. Black Eyed Peas were playing on the radio. Makes me laugh every time I think about it. Story 18. Lost it with my current boyfriend 2 years ago. We were dating for 6 months beforehand, and went on a hike for my birthday to my favorite hot springs inside of a slot canyon. It was dark by the time we got to the end where the hot springs were, and no one else was there. We had sex half in and half out of the hot spring. It was a genuinely awesome experience. As we were hiking out, it started pouring, and we had to legitimately book IT back from this 3-mile hike through a slot canyon to get out. This normally takes about 3 hours to navigate with rock climbing and dangerous terrains even when dry. We made it out in about 1.5 hours running as we were worried about flooding, which, yes, can happen quickly. Thankfully, we made it out unscathed. We'll definitely check the weather next time. It was one of the coolest adrenaline rush experiences I've ever had, and I am very lucky to have had such a great time. Story 19. It's boring, but here is my story. It was right after prom my senior year, and my girlfriend at the time had apparently bought the rubber beforehand. She busted them out when I went to drop her off at her parents' house. The rest is history. Story 20. In college with a good guy friend. We both had a crush on each other. One day we were making out, and I told him I was a virgin and wanted him to teach me. It was a surprisingly comfortable and amazing experience. Story 21. At my brother's wedding. I was 15, she was 28. Didn't realize until years later how fucked up it actually was. She didn't know I was 15, I looked 19-20. Edit. I think because at the time I was slightly proud / found it funny that I'd lost my virginity in such a rock and roll way. But looking back years later, I realized it could have ruined my big brother's big day and potentially sent someone to prison. Luckily neither of those things happened. She had just gone through a messy divorce, and I believe to this day she was just drunk and horny for a groomsman. There's a pun in there somewhere, one of you comics figure it out. Story 22. I almost had the same story, but my cousin's wedding. I was playing darts with one of the bridesmaids. My uncle would walk by and give me tips on picking this girl up. It was working, and she asked me if I wanted to get out of there. I said yes. She asked if I drove. My uncle, who was hanging at the table next, butts in and tells her no. My parents drove me, and I had to go home with them because I had school in the morning. I died. She felt terrible for trying to pick a minor and was embarrassed for me, but that fucking guy was dying with laughter. Set up and cock-blocked by my uncle. God damn. He gave you the knowledge and experience you needed for later without showing you too much before you were ready. Story 23. To a girl I'd known since middle school. She was at a sleepover with some friends our freshman year of high school. Got a phone call at like 2 a.m. from her and her friends asking if I can get them beer. I had a case from a party in the fridge in my room. I was living with my aunt and uncle, and they really didn't care if I drank. So I drove over to her friend's house, and it's like 6 girls having a mini party basically. Her parents were gone. They had me park a block away 'cause no guys rule. And snuck in. Well, they all thank me, and of course the topic sex comes up. Well, Katie and I both admit that we are virgins, so the committee decides we should have sex. We were both down, so fuck it, let's fuck. So yeah, my first time I had an audience. Still friends with Katie to this day. I hang out with her and her wife quite often. Story 24. When I was 13, my dad was a truck driver who was gone most of the week but back on weekends. In the quest for more money, he decided to become an owner/operator LHT with Prime, which would keep him on the road for months at a time. My dad decided he didn't want to be away from my stepmom for that long, so she got her CDL and went with him. My stepmom's friend Rami moved in to watch me and my 3 brothers and brought her 2 daughters with her, one 17 and one 19. The 19-year-old called me up to her room one day and asked me if I knew how to eat a pussy. I told her no, and she asked me if I wanted to learn. I was a horny 13-year-old, so of fucking course I thought I hit the jackpot. I went down on her, and then we had some very brief penetration where I came inside her almost immediately upon entering her. The fun part besides the statutory rape was since I had no clue about condoms and whatnot, she missed her period the next month, and I got my first pregnancy scare at the age of 13 years old. She didn't end up being pregnant, but it was definitely a heavy burden weighing on my mind for quite a bit. Story 25. To an escort, I had hired her for an hour. After 5 minutes of kissing, she touches my dick and I came right away. We cuddled for half an hour. At that point, it was the best thing I have ever tried. I then got hard again, and she rode me for another 5 minutes before I came again. We spent the rest of the time talking, kissing, and cuddling. I was 25 at the time. Story 26. I was a high school sophomore, had a girl I had spent a bunch of time sucking face with and petting very heavily. One day we cut class and went to my house because no one was there. She was not a virgin, but told me she was. We did it on the floor within 10 feet of the front door. Story 27. In a dorm room on University of Pitt campus, I was 18, he was 22, he charmed me with his knowledge of punk rock and nerd culture, he quoted me the Dead Aloes, Dungeons and Dragons, skid verbatim, and something about being a pudgy fair-skinned, freckled and red-haired Irish dude from Philadelphia. I was a willing participant, and was just ready to get it over and done with. We'd proceed to have a friends with benefits situation when he'd be back in town up until he got married. There were some things that went down, and we aren't friends anymore, and it makes me sad because we got along as friends so well aside from the fact that we banged from time to time. No regrets.